She's just another desk jockey in khakis. Probably here to count paper clips. That's what they sneered, right in front of her. No uniform, no rank, just a faded badge hanging loosely on her chest. They laughed when she asked about the USS Colorado, mocking her like she didn't belong. But then the sea shifted, a black shadow moved beneath the waves. Without warning, a nuclear submarine surged to the surface, silent and massive. The captain climbed out, eyes locked on hers. And then he saluted. The mocking laughter died instantly. Who was this woman to command such respect? You're watching Veteran Biker. Tell us where you're watching from below. Like and subscribe. The truth wasn't meant to surface, but today it did. The morning air hung heavy with mist over Naval Station Norfolk, casting a muted grey light over the sprawling complex. It was just before 6 when a nondescript sedan eased through the guarded entrance, the driver's face unreadable beneath the shadow of a baseball cap. From the passenger seat, a woman emerged, Alina Wren. She moved with quiet purpose, her faded khaki blazer and equally worn pants setting her apart from the crisp navy uniforms that bustled around her. No one called out greetings, no salutes accompanied her passage. To the base personnel, she was a ghost, an outsider with a civilian badge clipped to her chest. The badge itself looked old, the ink on the Department of Energy Special Oversight Division seal slightly faded, its edges curling with age. But beneath that ordinary facade lay an authority none at the base could yet grasp. Alina's gaze swept the perimeter as she approached Pier 12, steady and unyielding. Her hair, streaked with salt and pepper, was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and her eyes, sharp and calculating, missed nothing. Every step was measured, every breath controlled. The soldiers and sailors around her cast sideways glances, whispers flitting like shadows. She was an enigma, and that bred suspicion. At the security checkpoint, Chief Warrant Officer there, a man with 2 decades of naval service etched in the lines around his eyes, glanced up from his clipboard. He didn't bother with formalities, ID and authorization, he said flatly, his voice devoid of warmth. Alina lifted her badge with steady hands. Department of Energy, Special Oversight Division. Their eyes flicked over the worn badge, a faint sneer touching his lips. Another audit. We just had Pentagon folks through here last month. Not an audit, Alina replied evenly. I need information regarding the USS Colorado's scheduled movements. The room seemed to pause. An Ohio-class nuclear submarine was no ordinary subject for civilian inquiry. Several sailors nearby exchanged glances, their amusement barely contained. That information is classified, they said, handing back her badge as if it were a nuisance. You'll need specific clearance documents. My clearance is noted on this badge, Alina said calmly, meeting his gaze. A younger petty officer leaned against a nearby vehicle, a smirk playing at his lips. Lady, those boats don't surface for pencil pushers. The laughter rippled through the gathered sailors. Alina nodded once, unflinching. If you're interested, the pier has a great view of the harbor. She turned and walked toward the water's edge, leaving a silence behind her that was heavier than the morning mist. Minutes passed. Alina stood alone, watching the water with a patience honed by years of unseen battles. Inside the operations center, Commander Theo Laramie reviewed sonar data, his brow furrowed in concentration. A blip appeared on the screen, an anomaly moving at an impossible trajectory. "Run that trace again," he ordered. The technician's fingers danced across the keyboard. "Same result, sir. Unidentified submarine approaching Pier 12 at 15 knots. Laramie's eyes narrowed. No scheduled vessels from that vector. The room buzzed with tension. "Get me Sub-N command. Check Allied exercises. Reports confirmed. No Allied ships were expected. The unidentified vessel ignored secure communications. Activate security protocols," Laramie commanded. Armed teams to Pier 12. Outside, chaos stirred as alarms pierced the morning calm. Chief there, mid-coffee, froze as ripples disturbed the water. The sea bulged, and without warning, a massive black hull breached the surface, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine surfacing directly before Alina. The cups slipped from their hands, shattering on the concrete. The crew around the pier fell silent, weapons drawn but hands trembling. The submarine's conning tower rose fully, bearing unfamiliar insignia, symbols beyond their decades of experience. The hatch hissed open, and Captain Hale Brenner emerged, standing rigid as his eyes locked onto Alina. Without hesitation, he saluted, a gesture reserved for command, respect absolute. Theirs world tilted. "What the hell? Who is she?" he whispered. Alina reached beneath her blazer, producing a small obsidian card embedded with platinum circuitry and a single red star. "I know what they don't report to," she said softly. The armed teams lowered their weapons. Commander Celeste Corrin entered swiftly, her presence commanding. "Authorization, Omega. You're Deepwell," she confirmed. Alina nodded, her gaze steel. The submarine was secured and prepared for inspection. Hours later, in a secured briefing room, Alina laid bare the truth, a shadow war within the nuclear command. 3 admirals under surveillance, communications hijacked, a coup masked as reform. Captain Brenner listened, fatigue and conflict etched in every line of his face. "The Omega Protocol, it supersedes presidential orders," he admitted. Alina's voice was steady. "Deepwell has only activated it 4 times since 1983. Outside, the world watched unaware. The president awaited a briefing few could imagine. Alina's role was clear, guardian of a system designed to protect from within. The clock ticked, history turning silently. Her badge, a symbol unseen by most, now spoke louder than any uniform. The weight of her responsibility was a burden carried in silence. Some truths remain hidden, not for lack of importance, but for the fragility of peace. The woman in khakis was anything but ordinary. She was the line no one dared cross. The sentinel in the shadows, the authority that surfaced when no one else could. The steel-grey sky hung low over Naval Station Norfolk as Alina Wren stood alone at the edge of Pier 12. The morning mist clung to her faded khaki blazer like a second skin, chilling yet strangely comforting. Around her, the base was a restless hive of activity, armed security teams scrambling into position, radios crackling with terse commands, and sailors whispering theories, disbelief painting their faces. The air was thick with tension, but Alina remained still, her sharp gaze locked on the massive silhouette that had just broken the surface of the harbor. The USS Colorado, an Ohio-class nuclear submarine, sat before her like a dark sentinel. Its black hull reflected the dim light as if absorbing the weight of every pair of eyes watching it. Behind her, the echo of footsteps stirred. Commander Celeste Corrin, her black hair pulled into a tight bun, approached briskly, her expression unreadable. She stopped a few feet away, nodding to the armed guards as if to remind them of their orders. Alina turned, her face a mask of calm authority. "The authorization card," she said, her voice steady despite the electric atmosphere. With a measured movement, she withdrew a small obsidian card from an inner pocket of her blazer. Embedded with intricate platinum circuitry and bearing a single glowing red star, the card was unlike any identification anyone at the base had ever seen. Its sleek, almost otherworldly design contrasted starkly with the mundane badges that littered the military ranks. Celeste's eyes widened imperceptibly, and she signaled to the nearest security officer. "Cease fire," she commanded. The armed guards relaxed, lowering their weapons as the weight of Alina's authority settled over the pier. A murmur rippled through the gathered personnel, shifting from confusion to reluctant respect. Commander Theo Laramie entered the scene, his stern features etched with disbelief and concern. "What exactly are we dealing with here?" he demanded, eyes flicking between Alina and the submarine. Alina's gaze met his. "A chain of command beyond your understanding," she replied, "and one that supersedes even the highest military orders." Inside the operations center, technicians hurriedly accessed classified communication channels. A digital map pulsed with real-time data, displaying the submarine's recent maneuvers and unauthorized transmissions. Alina's voice cut through the commotion. "The Omega Protocol is active. This isn't a routine surfacing." Captain Hale Brenner, now standing on the submarine's deck, radioed in. "We've received conflicting orders, but we obey the override. The civilian authority is confirmed." The room fell silent. The words carried a weight that defied explanation. This civilian woman, dismissed moments ago as insignificant, wielded control over one of the most lethal weapons in the world. As reports flooded in, Alina outlined the chilling reality. Several high-ranking officers had been compromised, their loyalties shifted, communications intercepted and manipulated. The nuclear fleet was vulnerable from within. The team sifted through encrypted logs, revealing attempts to reroute command channels through unauthorized means, shadow operations designed to fracture the chain of command. Yet amidst this chaos, the USS Colorado remains steadfast, responding only to the directives issued by the Orchid Directive, the clandestine oversight program Alina represented. The room absorbed the gravity of the situation. The country's most devastating arsenal had a secret guardian, one concealed by layers of bureaucracy and silence. Alina's presence was a reminder that true power often dwells in shadows, where unseen hands steer the course of history. As the sun climbed higher, piercing through the mist, the base braced itself. The battle was no longer just about weapons or strategy. It was about trust, loyalty, and the unseen forces that protect or endanger a nation. And Alina Wren stood at the epicenter, the silent sentinel in khakis who commanded respect where no one had expected. The dim glow of multiple monitors cast shifting shadows across the operations center, where Commander Theo Laramie sat hunched over a bank of screens, eyes narrowed in concentration. Data streams flowed like veins of light, feeding a constant stream of information into the room. But what caught his attention was a series of irregular communications, signals that refused to conform to the expected patterns. "Run a deep scan on all active command channels," Laramie ordered, his voice taut with urgency. Around him, technicians scrambled to comply, fingers flying over keyboards, invoking layers of encryption protocols and security filters. Alina Wren stood at the edge of the room, her gaze unwavering as she observed the frantic activity. Her role here was both crucial and precarious. She was a civilian, yet wielded an authority that many of the military staff struggled to accept. Despite the cold stares and whispered doubts, she carried the burden of a secret that could fracture the foundation of national security. The results were troubling. The data revealed multiple breaches, signals intercepted, rerouted, and manipulated by unknown actors with intimate knowledge of the system. 3 admirals were flagged for suspicious activity, their communications cross-referenced with external networks linked to foreign operatives. "This isn't just a hacking attempt," Alina said, voice low but firm. "This is an internal coup." Captain Hale Brenner, standing nearby, absorbed the news with a grim expression. "Those who should protect are undermining the chain of command," he murmured, "and our fleet is caught in the crossfire." Alina nodded. "The USS Colorado is the only vessel confirmed to have resisted these attempts. It obeyed the Omega Protocol, ignoring countermanding orders designed to compromise its mission." A flicker of doubt passed through Brenner's eyes. "Omega Protocol. It's supposed to be theoretical, something taught in academies but never enacted." "Until now," Alina replied. She motioned to a display showing encrypted logs and a timeline of intercepted orders. 17 minutes before surfacing, the Colorado received an order to stand down, she explained. But that order was overridden by the Orchid Directive, the civilian oversight program we've maintained in the shadows since the early 80s. Laramie paced, his mind racing. If the program is activated, who's running it now? How many of you are there? Alina hesitated only briefly before responding, "Enough?" Her answer, cryptic yet resolute, left an unspoken weight hanging in the air. The Orchid Directive operated outside normal command structures, a shadow government tasked with safeguarding nuclear assets from internal and external threats alike. As the hours stretched, the team pieced together a portrait of a fractured command, a ghost chain, where loyalties were divided and intentions obscured. The threat was no longer abstract, it was a tangible fracture within the very heart of the military. Alina's thoughts drifted momentarily to a report she'd written 7 years prior, a dire warning predicting precisely this scenario. Back then, her concerns had been dismissed, buried beneath layers of bureaucracy and disbelief. Today, the truth was undeniable. The room fell into a tense silence, broken only by the hum of machines and the distant echoes of commands being issued across the base. "We're not just fighting an enemy outside these walls," Alina said quietly. "We're fighting a shadow from within." Captain Brenner looked at her, respect mingled with the exhaustion in his eyes. "Then what's our next move?" Alina's gaze hardened. "We confirm the loyalty of every asset. We isolate compromised channels. And we prepare for a confrontation that may come sooner than anyone expects." Outside, the morning mist began to lift, revealing a harbor holding its breath. Beneath the surface, the Colorado waited, a silent sentinel ready to respond only to those who truly commanded. Inside the operations center, the battle for the soul of the nation had already begun. The digital hum of the operations center seemed to pulse with the urgency of a heartbeat racing toward a climax. Alina moved through the room with quiet command, issuing precise instructions and absorbing every piece of data pouring in. The team's efforts focused on tracing the origins of the compromised communication pathways that had threatened to fracture the nation's nuclear command. One technician, a young woman with focused eyes and nimble fingers, approached Alina hesitantly. "Ma'am, we've identified encrypted transmissions routed through multiple shell companies in Singapore. The volume of traffic spikes before each attempted override." Alina nodded, already anticipating the implication. "Foreign intelligence and insider collaborators," she said. "A coordinated assault, not a rogue actor." Commander Laramie circled the data displays, eyes narrowed. "This isn't just a threat to one vessel or base. It's a systemic attack on the entire triad: submarines, carriers, and land-based silos." "Yes," Alina affirmed, "and it's been incubating for at least 18 months. Behind the scenes, satellite imagery surfaced on the main display, showing naval movements near Alaska, Chinese exercises in the South China Sea, and shadowy facilities in mountainous regions. Each represented pressure points, strategic distractions testing America's fractured command network. Captain Brenner stepped forward. "We need to know who is still loyal and who's compromised." The Colorado proved it's possible to override faulty orders, but how many others will follow? Alina's gaze hardened. "We'll begin with a full authentication sweep. Every asset must respond to Orchid Directive protocols or be isolated." As the team digested the scope, a new alert blinked red on a screen, a command center refusing to comply. Laramie's voice was tight. "Minot Air Force Base, lockdown in effect. Colonel Westfield has barricaded himself and refuses to acknowledge Orchid Directive authority." Alina's jaw clenched. "Activate secondary operators. Dr. Elaine Thorne is ready." The room grew tense as every update hinted at deeper fractures. In a secure briefing room elsewhere, Alina convened with senior officers, their faces etched with worry and disbelief. The crisis wasn't just military, it was a test of America's resilience, of its very ability to govern itself under duress. They reviewed the encrypted logs and communications, highlighting the precise moments false orders were sent, disguised as legitimate commands. "It's a ghost chain," Alina explained, a parallel command structure seeking to supplant the official one. The silence that followed was heavy. Alina broke it. "We must assume some among us have been recruited, coerced, or compromised. Trust will be our most scarce resource." Captain Brenner looked to her. "What about the 3 admirals?" Alina's eyes darkened. "Under surveillance, but likely active. We've detained 2. The 3rd, Admiral Nolan Krell, is unaccounted for, last seen boarding a private jet to Helsinki." Whispers rippled through the room. "This operation isn't just a breach," Laramie added grimly. "It's a coup in waiting." Alina nodded, which is why the Orchid Directive exists, to intervene before the system falls. The weight of that mission settled on everyone present. Outside, the morning had shifted to a pale, cold day. The USS Colorado remained moored, a silent witness to the unfolding storm. Within Alina, the memory of the report she'd penned 7 years ago flickered, a warning ignored, a future predicted. Her resolve hardened. The nation's fate depended on shadows she alone navigated. The hours stretched on, shadows lengthening across the walls of the operations center. Every new piece of intelligence peeled back another layer of the conspiracy, revealing an intricate web of deception and betrayal reaching deep into the military and political elite. Alina gathered her thoughts, her mind a calculus of risks and contingencies. Her role was more than oversight. It was a guardian standing at the edge of catastrophe, a sentinel for a nation unaware of how close it teetered. The encrypted communications grew more frequent, some disguised as routine commands, others as urgent orders countermanding legitimate ones. Every attempt to hijack control was met with resistance, but the question lingered: how long could the Orchid Directive hold the line? In a quiet corner, Alina's thoughts flickered back to her own past, a sharp contrast to the world of uniforms and salutes surrounding her. Once considered too independent, too unorthodox, she had been sidelined by those who feared her clarity and resolve. Now, standing as the linchpin of a secret program created in the shadows of the Cold War, she bore the weight of a legacy few knew existed. The data feed pulsed. More assets confirmed loyal, but pockets of resistance remained stubborn. The deep well of disloyalty was not yet drained. Suddenly, an alert flashed red. An unidentified vessel approaching from an unexpected vector. Protocol dictated immediate engagement, but Alina's voice stopped the rush. "Hold fire! It may be one of ours, testing..." Minutes later, a second submarine surfaced, this time in the Pacific, a coordinated signal confirming the unity of command despite the fractures. The room breathed a collective sigh of cautious relief. Alina's gaze swept across the team. "We've bought time, but the war has just begun." Captain Brenner stepped beside her. "What now?" She looked out the window, the harbor calm as if untouched by the storm beneath. "We shore up every weak link, hunt the infiltrators, and prepare for when the shadows strike again." Outside, the USS Colorado sat silently, a testament to resilience amid chaos. Inside, a silent war waged, a ghost chain holding fast, and Alina Wren, the woman in khaki, stood unwavering, the unseen shield between order and oblivion. The Situation Room buzzed with controlled urgency as Alina Wren took her place at the head of the conference table. Around her, senior officers and intelligence analysts stared at the sprawling digital maps and data feeds projected onto the walls, evidence of a plot that reached far beyond anything they had anticipated. The weight in the room was palpable, the air thick with unease. Alina cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the murmurs. What we are facing is not a simple security breach. This is a coordinated effort to fracture the command structure controlling our most critical assets, the nuclear triad. Her gaze locked onto Commander Theo Laramie. Tell them about the intercepted communications. Laramie stepped forward, tapping a sequence on the console. Satellite imagery flickered into view, displaying naval movements near Alaska and the South China Sea, along with encrypted communication patterns traced back to shell companies and foreign diplomatic channels. We've confirmed coordinated naval exercises by potential adversaries, Laramie explained, designed to distract and probe weaknesses. At the same time, internal channels were compromised, attempting to inject false launch orders and block legitimate commands. The room shifted uneasily. Admiral Nolan Krell's name appeared on a list of suspects, his connections to the covert operation under investigation undeniable yet shrouded in layers of plausible deniability. Captain Hale Brenner's face hardened. These aren't mere accidents or technical glitches. This is deliberate sabotage, designed to strip civilian oversight and place nuclear control in the hands of a select few. Alina nodded gravely. Exactly. A shadow command, parallel to our own, intending to create strategic paralysis or seize control when it counts. Director Celeste Corin stepped forward. What about the political dimension? Any evidence of congressional complicity? Alina's eyes darkened. 3 senators on the Intelligence Committee are implicated, seeking to centralize nuclear authority under their influence. Their plan calls for a streamlined command, eliminating independent oversight programs like Orchid Directive. A stunned silence fell over the room. Laramie broke it. So the threat comes from within. Military, political, and foreign collusion. Correct, Alina said, which makes this operation as much a battle for the soul of our democracy as it is for our security. The Secretary of Defense's voice rang out from the back of the room. What's the plan? Alina unfolded the next phase. We activate the Broken Arrow protocol. Every deployed ballistic missile submarine will surface simultaneously, holding position in a synchronized display of command unity. The goal being? Asked the Secretary. To demonstrate to both our citizens and adversaries that the chain of command remains intact and civilian control over nuclear assets is absolute. Brenner leaned in. Will this expose our positions to foreign surveillance? Alina acknowledged the risk. Yes, but the tactical advantage of asserting control outweighs the intelligence risk. It's a calculated message. We are united and vigilant. The room buzzed with the implications. Celeste added, simultaneously, we conduct a system-wide sweep to isolate compromised assets and personnel. Dr. Elaine Thorne is leading a team to implement override protocols on resistant bases. Alina's tone sharpened. Failure is not an option. This is a national emergency. As plans solidified, a new alert interrupted the briefing, an unidentified vessel approaching the base from an unexpected direction. Laramie activated the feed. The screen revealed a sleek black submarine moving swiftly beneath the waves. Alina's eyes narrowed. That's not scheduled. Prepare for interception. Outside, the waters churned beneath an overcast sky. The battle lines were drawn, not just between nations, but within the very structures meant to protect. Alina stood poised on the edge of a storm that could redefine the future. The stakes had never been higher. The cold steel walls of the conference room echoed with the low hum of technology and the soft murmurs of voices grappling with an unsettling truth. Alina Wren sat at the head of the table, her fingers steepled beneath her chin as she reviewed the intelligence briefing projected before her. The room was filled with the nation's top military minds and intelligence officials, yet the unease was palpable, a shared recognition of the invisible war they now faced. 3 Ohio-class submarines, 2 aircraft carriers, and at least 1 ground-based nuclear facility. Alina began, her tone grave. These assets are either compromised or under direct threat from an internal faction seeking to fracture the chain of command. Commander Theo Laramie's voice cut in, tension evident as he pointed toward the digital map. The coordination is alarmingly precise. Our intercepted communications show synchronized attempts to override legitimate orders aimed at disabling these strategic points simultaneously. Captain Hale Brenner leaned forward, his eyes shadowed with exhaustion. The USS Colorado's resistance was exceptional, but it was an exception. What about the others? Alina's gaze hardened. That's what we need to determine. Our priority is identifying loyal commanders and securing their vessels and facilities before the splinter group can act. Celeste Corrin stepped forward, highlighting the operational difficulties. Some of the compromised bases have active resistance. Minot Air Force Base is locked down. Colonel Westfield refuses to comply with Orchid directive orders. Alina nodded. Dr. Elaine Thorne is on site, implementing override protocols to regain control. But this is only part of the solution. The room fell silent as Alina revealed classified intelligence reports. We've uncovered evidence of encrypted financial transactions routing through shell companies in Singapore, funding operatives embedded within the military hierarchy. She paused, letting the gravity sink in. This isn't just a security breach. It's an orchestrated coup attempt. A wave of whispers rippled through the gathered officials. Admiral Nolan Krell's name appeared on screen. He was last seen boarding a private jet to Helsinki. He's the suspected architect behind much of this conspiracy. Laramie frowned. If he's managed to evade capture, we have a serious problem. Alina's voice was calm but resolute. Then we have a mission. Locate Krell, disrupt his network, and dismantle this shadow command. Brenner's gaze flicked to the map again. What about the carriers? They're mobile assets, harder to control. Exactly, Alina said. Our response teams are coordinating with fleet commanders to secure loyalty and initiate verification protocols. Suddenly, an alert flashed red. A distress signal from a remote command post refusing to acknowledge Orchid directive authority. Laramie sighed. Another hotspot. We're deploying rapid response units. The tension in the room was thick, the urgency undeniable. Alina looked around, her eyes locking with each officer. We are engaged in a battle not just for control of weapons, but for the integrity of our nation. She leaned back, the weight of responsibility clear on her face. Our next steps will define the future. We must be swift, decisive, and united. Outside, the harbor remained deceptively calm, but beneath the surface the tides of power were shifting. The night had given way to an uneasy dawn as Naval Station Norfolk buzzed with an intensity unseen in its decades of operation. Inside the secure command center, a tense hum filled the air, a symphony of whispered commands, flashing screens, and strategic calculations. Alina Wren stood before a bank of monitors, the weight of her responsibility pressing down like the thick fog still hanging over the harbor outside. "Activate Broken Arrow Protocol," she ordered, her voice steady despite the storm swirling within. The phrase carried a gravity none in the room took lightly, a coordinated, nationwide signal that nuclear assets remained firmly under civilian control. Commander Theo Laramie nodded, fingers flying over the control panel, all ballistic missile submarines to surface simultaneously, awaiting final confirmation from fleet commanders. Captain Hale Brenner, now aboard the USS Colorado, spoke into his radio. "Colorado ready to comply, standing by for command confirmation." The digital map in the command center came alive with a series of green dots, symbols representing the nuclear submarines deployed across the globe. As each vessel acknowledged the order, the dots blinked in unison, a visual heartbeat connecting the dispersed nodes of America's most lethal deterrent. Alina's eyes never left the screen. This is more than a maneuver, it's a message to our people and our adversaries. A younger technician approached hesitantly. "Ma'am, we have reports of resistance from 3 locations: Kitsap Naval Base, Minot Air Force Base, and a ground silo near Malmstrom." Alina's jaw tightened. "Deploy secondary teams to those locations. Override protocols must be enforced." Suddenly, an alert flared red. Kitsap Naval Base had initiated a lockdown. On the screen, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man whose steely gaze bore the marks of a man prepared to challenge everything. Commander Julian Reeve, executive officer of the USS Maine, was standing against the tide. Inside the secure room, Alina's voice was calm but firm. Reeve's actions jeopardized the entire operation. "I want a secure line open." "I'm going to speak with him personally." Meanwhile, across the base, SEAL teams and cybersecurity units moved in tandem. Their mission was to reclaim control, to dismantle the splinter forces threatening to fracture the nation's defenses. The tension escalated as the USS Colorado surfaced, its hull breaking the calm waters. At the same moment, other Ohio-class submarines rose in strategic positions worldwide, a synchronized ballet of power and precision. Alina's phone buzzed. It was Director Celeste Corrin. "Mr. President has requested a full briefing. He wants confirmation that we still hold command integrity." Alina responded without hesitation. "We will provide it. Broken Arrow is underway. The submarines are responding." Hours passed as the world watched, some unaware of the silent war playing out beneath the surface. Satellites recorded the submarines' rise, their brief but unmistakable presence sending a clear signal to all who watched. In the command center, tension gave way to a cautious optimism as green indicators multiplied, confirming loyalty across most assets. But the red warnings remained, a stark reminder of pockets of defiance and compromise. Alina turned to the assembled officers. "This is a victory, but not the end. We have to root out the remaining threats." As night fell, the submarines descended once more, disappearing into the depths as if ghosts never emerged. Yet the battle for the nation's security was far from over. Alina's thoughts drifted to the message she had delivered years ago, the warning unheeded, now a reality she faced daily. She looked to the future with resolve, knowing that in the shadows the real war was being fought, and only those willing to carry the burden unseen could hope to protect a nation blind to its own peril. The air in the command center was electric, charged with the tension of a nation on the brink. Screens flickered with live feeds from oceans across the globe, showing the coordinated emergence of the Ohio-class submarines. Each vessel, a colossal shadow in the water, rose in unison, as if called by an unseen conductor. The synchronized surfacing was more than a military maneuver. It was a statement, a silent roar of authority echoing across the world's seas. Alina stood before the central console, her eyes sharp, scanning every update. The faces around her reflected a mixture of awe and apprehension, witnesses to a display of power rarely seen, even within these halls. The weight of their task bore heavily on all present. The message had to be clear. The United States maintained absolute civilian control over its nuclear arsenal, despite the shadows threatening from within. Yet beneath the surface of this triumphant display, pockets of resistance simmered dangerously. Kitsap Naval Base remained a flashpoint. The executive officer, Commander Julian Reeve, was entrenched, wielding his own narrative, a conviction that the Orchid Directive was a bureaucratic overreach, threatening national security. Alina's secure line buzzed, her phone vibrating with incoming data. The face of Director Celeste Corrin appeared, stern and focused. "Ma'am, we have an update. Reeve refuses to comply with override protocols. He's barricaded the command center and is threatening to expose Orchid Directive's existence publicly unless granted immunity." Alina inhaled deeply, steadying herself against the rising tide of crisis. "Prepare a negotiation team. I want to speak with him personally. This can't end in confrontation. Meanwhile, the cybersecurity units race to reinforce firewalls and isolate compromised communication nodes. The battle was not only physical, but digital, a high-stakes chess match where every move could trigger disaster. As the minutes ticked by, Alina's thoughts flickered to the past, the warnings she'd issued years earlier, dismissed by those who feared transparency. Now the consequences of silence and disbelief echoed loudly. Suddenly, an incoming video feed cut through the tension. It was Reeve himself, appearing from the darkened command center at Kitsap, his voice calm but resolute. "Alina," he began, "I didn't choose this path lightly, but the Orchid Directive operates beyond oversight, beyond accountability. What you call a safeguard, I see as a threat to democracy." Her response was measured, firm. "Commander, our responsibility is to protect lives and maintain order. Without the Orchid Directive, control of the arsenal would fall into dangerous hands." Their exchange was tense, laden with history and conflicting ideals. It was a battle for hearts and minds as much as control. Back at Norfolk, the other submarines had completed their surfacing and submerging cycle. The message sent and received worldwide. Satellites captured the moment, and global powers watched with varying degrees of alarm and respect. Yet the war within continued. Inside the Pentagon, the Secretary of Defense convened an emergency session. Reports poured in, compromised officers detained, equipment secured, but unease lingered. The President's voice was calm but authoritative as he addressed the assembled leaders. "We stand at a crossroads. Our security depends not just on weapons, but on trust. Trust in the people we've entrusted with their command." He turned to Alina. "Your role and that of Orchid Directive is vital, but so is transparency and oversight." Alina nodded, knowing the delicate balance required. "We will continue to operate in the shadows, but with unwavering commitment to accountability." As the day wore on, the crisis began to stabilize. The red alerts diminished, replaced by cautious green. Yet the path ahead remained fraught. Alina retreated to a quiet corner of the base, her thoughts heavy. The battles were not over, and the price of failure unimaginable. But as the sun set over the harbor, casting long shadows over the water, she remained steadfast, a sentinel in khaki, the unseen guardian of a fragile peace. The cool air in the command center grew heavier with every passing hour. Alina's face was etched with determination as she monitored every feed, every report. The fractured command structure still posed grave risks, but the synchronization of the Broken Arrow protocol was a milestone, a tangible assertion that civilian oversight remained unbroken despite the subterfuge. Yet there was no time for complacency. The pockets of defiance, those red dots flashing stubbornly on her screens, were the greatest threats. Alina's mind raced through contingencies, calculations of loyalty and risk. She summoned the lead cyber operations team, prioritized Kitsap Naval Base. Commander Reeves' resistance must be neutralized through dialogue before force. Every move will be scrutinized. The cyber lead nodded. "Understood, ma'am. We're also tracing encrypted communications from suspected insiders." Minutes later, a secure video link was established with Reeves' location. The face that appeared was resolute, a mix of defiance and conviction. "You say we're a threat to democracy," Reeves said quietly. "But who guards the guards? What safeguards the Orchid Directive itself?" Alina's reply was calm but resolute. "We answer to a classified oversight committee, a body representing all branches of government. Our authority is strict, our mission clear." Their conversation was tense but civil, a battle of ideals beneath the surface of a deeper war. Back in Norfolk, fleet commanders coordinated the verification sweeps. Technology teams deployed overrides, isolating compromised nodes. Marines moved swiftly to secure sensitive sites. The tide was turning, but the enemy was cunning, resourceful. In the late afternoon, a report arrived. Encrypted financial trails linked to shell companies in Singapore had been shut down, disrupting funding flows to rogue elements. Alina allowed herself a brief breath. "We've cut off their lifeline," she announced, yet the crisis's psychological toll was visible. Fatigue shadowed eyes and strained voices carried the weight of days without rest. As twilight descended, Alina walked to the pier. The USS Colorado lay silently in the fading light, its hull a dark sentinel against the glowing horizon. She reached into her pocket, touching the obsidian card, the red star gleaming faintly. This card represented more than authority. It was a promise, a shield against chaos. And as night embraced the base, Alina Wren remained vigilant, knowing the battle was far from over. She was the woman who carried the weight of unseen wars, the sentinel who stood between order and oblivion. The morning light filtered weakly through the reinforced windows of the Kitsap Naval Base Command Center, casting long shadows over the tense scene inside. Commander Julian Reeve sat behind a steel desk, his posture rigid, his gaze sharp and unwavering. Across the room, a small team of federal negotiators and security officers prepared to engage, their expressions a mixture of apprehension and resolve. Reeve's voice echoed through the hollow chamber as he addressed the assembled officers. "I am not here to surrender lightly. The Orchid Directive operates in shadows with little accountability. My concerns are for the safety of this nation's democratic principles." Outside, federal agents set up perimeter controls, blocking any potential interference while keeping the situation contained. The stakes could not be higher. Reeve held a secure drive, an encrypted data cache he insisted contained proof of a conspiracy reaching deep into the government's core. Back at Naval Station Norfolk, Alina Wren received the update and immediately convened a secure conference call with the negotiation team. Her voice was calm but commanding. "We must de-escalate. Commander Reeve is a key player. I will go to him personally." The journey to Kitsap was swift and fraught with tension. Alina's mind raced through every contingency as she prepared to face a man whose resolve matched her own. Upon arrival, she was escorted through the secure corridors to the command center. The air was thick with unspoken histories and ideological clashes. Reeve stood as she entered, eyes studying her intently. "You're braver than I expected," he said. Alina smiled faintly. "And you're more stubborn than I hoped." Their conversation was a dance of words and wills. Reeve laid out his fears, that the Orchid Directive, despite its intentions, was a threat to constitutional oversight. Alina countered with evidence of infiltrations, manipulated command channels, and the necessity of a silent safeguard. Hours passed as they negotiated, probing each other's convictions. At one point, Reeve asked, "What guarantees do we have that this oversight won't become another shadow tyranny?" Alina's reply was unwavering. "Transparency, accountability, and a committee of representatives across all branches. We are the fail-safe, not the overlords." Slowly, the ice began to thaw. Reeve handed over the encrypted drive, his expression conflicted but resolute. "This goes to the highest level, no exceptions." Back at Norfolk, the intelligence team began analyzing the data. The contents were explosive, evidence implicating 3 senators on the Intelligence Committee, working alongside Admiral Nolan Krell to centralize nuclear command outside civilian oversight. Alina and her team realized the scope of the threat was broader than anticipated. While the crisis at Kitsap eased, new challenges emerged. Resistance in other bases remained, and the political ramifications rippled through Washington. Alina's role evolved, from guardian of assets to a defender of democracy itself. The battlefield was no longer just military, it was political, ideological, and deeply personal. As she left Kitsap, Alina knew this was but a chapter in an ongoing war, a fight for the very soul of the nation. The halls of the Pentagon hummed with a low, constant buzz, the weight of unseen battles hanging thick in the air. Inside a secure conference room, Alina Wren sat at the head of a long table, flanked by senior intelligence officers, military leaders, and a few trusted civilian advisors. The glow from the multiple screens cast flickering shadows across their faces, revealing a mixture of fatigue and resolve. "Ladies and gentlemen," Alina began, her voice steady and commanding, "what we are confronting is not merely a breach of protocol or a security lapse. It is an orchestrated effort to redefine the command structure governing our most lethal assets." She clicked a remote, bringing up a detailed map illustrating the global positions of nuclear assets and overlays of intercepted communications. "Our investigation has confirmed that 3 senators on the Intelligence Committee have been working in concert with Admiral Nolan Krell. Their objective is to centralize control over nuclear forces, effectively bypassing civilian oversight programs like the Orchid Directive." A murmur rippled through the room. Alina continued, "They frame this as necessary reform, a way to streamline decision-making and prevent bureaucratic delays in a crisis. But the reality is a coup by another name." Captain Hale Brenner leaned forward, his jaw clenched. "They want to strip away the checks and balances that ensure accountability, to put immense power in the hands of a few unchecked individuals." Director Celeste Corin added, "Our intelligence indicates that they've been laying the groundwork for years, manipulating key personnel, funding covert operations, and leveraging their political influence to shield their activities." Alina's gaze swept the room. "This isn't just a military problem, it's a constitutional crisis, and it demands a response as multifaceted as the threat itself." The Secretary of Defense, his expression grim, nodded slowly. "What's the plan to neutralize this internal threat without fracturing our political institutions?" Alina responded, "We proceed carefully but decisively. The first step is to secure all compromised assets and personnel. Simultaneously, we prepare a comprehensive briefing for the President and the Classified Oversight Committee." She paused, letting the gravity of the moment settle over the room. Transparency within these walls, secrecy outside them. As the meeting adjourned, Alina remained behind, her thoughts heavy. The battle for control was as much about ideology as it was about power. The fragile balance of democracy and security teetered on a knife's edge. Meanwhile, across the country, teams executed coordinated raids and sweeps. The compromised officers and political operatives found themselves isolated, interrogated, and exposed. The tendrils of the conspiracy were severed one by one. But the fight was far from over. Late that evening, Alina reviewed a confidential message from an anonymous source within the Oversight Committee. A warning that not all factions within the government supported the Orchid Directive, and that further challenges loomed ahead. Her phone buzzed again. It was Commander Julian Reeve. "The data you secured is more explosive than we imagined. We need to prepare for fallout." Alina exhaled slowly. "Then we prepare for everything." Outside, the stars blinked coldly over the nation, silent witnesses to the war waged in shadows, and Alina Wren, the woman in khaki, stood as its unyielding guardian. The corridors of power in Washington, D.C. hummed with a restless energy, one not found in the usual bustle of government routine. Behind the closed doors of classified briefing rooms and secure offices, an invisible tension gripped the nation's defense and intelligence communities. It was a tension born of success and uncertainty, of battles won but questions left unanswered. Alina Wren sat alone in a dimly lit conference room deep within the Pentagon, the soft glow of a single desk lamp illuminating a worn photograph she traced with a fingertip, a reminder of the silent burdens carried by those in shadows. Around her, The heavy oak table stretched empty, save for a tablet displaying a live feed of the world's nuclear assets, blinking green and red, a digital heartbeat of fragile power. The operation to neutralize the internal threat had achieved significant victories. Admiral Krell was detained, corrupt senators removed, compromised bases reclaimed. The Broken Arrow Protocol had demonstrated the unity of command to the world, a choreographed ballet of submarines surfacing in defiance of chaos. Yet beneath this hard-won order lay a gnawing uncertainty. Who watches the Watchers? Alina spoke aloud, the question reverberating softly in the silent room. The door opened, and Commander Theo Laramie stepped inside, closing it quietly behind him. His tired eyes met hers, a shared understanding passing between them. It's the question no one wants to face. Alina gestured to the screens. We built the Orchid Directive to be the fail-safe, the shadow guardian of nuclear assets. But what if, in guarding the system, it becomes the system? What mechanisms hold us accountable? Laramie ran a hand through his graying hair. The Classified Oversight Committee is our answer, at least on paper. Justices, congressional members, executive officials, all selected for neutrality and integrity, but even they don't have the full picture. Alina's expression darkened. Secrecy breeds suspicion, even among ourselves. Suddenly, an alert blared softly from a nearby console. A faint signal, subtle but persistent, had been detected, an encrypted data stream probing the Orchid Directive's operations. Someone's watching us, Alina said grimly, and not with approval. Laramie's fingers danced across the keyboard as he initiated counter-surveillance measures. The signal's origin was masked, bouncing through layers of encryption and proxy servers, but traces led inward, into the very heart of the government. Internal faction, Laramie muttered, watching our moves, anticipating our responses. Alina's jaw tightened. They might not be adversaries in the traditional sense. Could be a faction protecting a different vision of governance, or worse, a rogue element with its own agenda. The team scrambled to analyze the threat, deploying cyber countermeasures and tightening security protocols. The digital cat-and-mouse game intensified, each side probing, defending, advancing. Meanwhile, in the halls of Congress, whispers of the Orchid Directive's existence rippled through back channels and closed meetings. Some hailed it as necessary, others decried it as an unchecked power beyond democratic oversight. An anonymous senator, voice muffled and identity hidden, warned, "What oversight exists when the watchdog is hidden? When accountability is replaced by secrecy?" Alina felt the weight of such sentiments. The very nature of the Orchid Directive demanded secrecy, yet democracy demanded transparency. It was a paradox with no easy solution. Her thoughts drifted to the people she'd met during this crisis, the loyal commanders, the defectors, the ideologues caught in a web of fear and ambition. She understood now that the battle for nuclear command was also a battle for trust, for the soul of governance. In a classified meeting with the President and the Oversight Committee, Alina presented the latest findings. The President's face was grave, the toll of leadership evident. "Your work has saved us from catastrophe," he said, "but the path forward is murky. How do we ensure those entrusted with power do not become the greatest threat?" Alina met his gaze. "By embracing both vigilance and humility, we must strengthen oversight, improve transparency where possible, and never forget that power without accountability is dangerous." The President nodded slowly. "Then let us begin that work." As the meeting adjourned, Alina lingered, the weight of responsibility heavy on her shoulders. The question lingered, haunting and unresolved, in a world where shadows protect the light. Who truly holds the balance? Outside, the city pulsed with life, unaware of the invisible war raging within its walls. Alina Wren rose, ready to face whatever came next. a sentinel not just of weapons, but of the fragile ideals they were meant to defend. The air inside the White House Situation Room was thick with tension, the weight of national security pressing down on every soul present. Alina Wren stood at the center of the room, flanked by senior advisors, intelligence officials, and military commanders. The walls were lined with screens displaying satellite feeds, data streams, and live status updates from naval fleets, missile silos, and air bases around the world. The president's gaze was fixed on Alina as she began her briefing. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to hear concerns the very fabric of our national security. The Orchid Directive, a program designed to safeguard our nuclear arsenal through civilian oversight, has been tested and strained as never before. Alina's voice was steady, but carried the gravity of the moment. Over the past weeks, we've uncovered an unprecedented attempt to fracture the chain of command, infiltrate key military assets, and compromise our ability to respond to a nuclear threat. She gestured to the main screen, which showed a timeline of encrypted command signals intercepted and analyzed. At 7:12 a.m., a moment frozen in history, the USS Colorado surfaced in response to the Orchid Directive's activation of the Omega Protocol, overriding false orders sent minutes before. The room fell silent, the weight of those words settling over everyone. The clock stopped at that precise moment, not in time but in the flow of command, a critical juncture where loyalty and authority were tested. Alina continued. The protocol worked as intended, but it revealed fractures we cannot ignore. The president nodded solemnly. Tell me, Ms. Wren, how many operators like you exist? How many guardians stand in the shadows? Alina met his eyes. Enough to protect the system, sir, but always fewer than the threats against it. Behind her, a secure display highlighted the locations of known operators worldwide, civilian identities woven seamlessly into society, ready to step forward when called upon. The briefing shifted to the broader implications of the breach. Intelligence reports revealed a sophisticated conspiracy involving compromised military personnel, political actors, and foreign agents. The financial trails led to offshore accounts and diplomatic channels, indicating a complex web of collusion. The room was filled with a mix of shock and determination. The president's voice broke the silence. This is more than a security threat. It's a test of our nation's resilience. Alina's next slide illuminated the room with satellite images of a mountain facility in North Korea, believed to be developing quantum interference technology capable of mimicking U.S. nuclear command protocols. This technology, combined with compromised communication systems, could enable false launch orders or prevent legitimate commands, creating strategic paralysis, she explained. Our adversaries are not merely testing our defenses, they are probing for weakness. The National Security Advisor leaned forward. What is your recommendation? Alina took a breath. We must activate all Orchid Directive operators simultaneously to conduct a full system verification. Any asset-failing authentication must be isolated immediately. The Secretary of Defense objected. The coordination required would be monumental, and the risk of exposure is high. Alina interrupted. We have prepared for this scenario since Orchid Directive's inception. The protocols are in place. What we need is your authorization. The president studied the assembled officials. After a moment, he nodded. Do it. The next 12 hours unfolded like a military operation of unparalleled scale. Operators across the globe revealed their identities, presenting their credentials to stunned commanders. The silent guardians emerged from the shadows to secure the nation's most lethal weapons. Screens in Strategic Command Headquarters displayed a cascade of green indicators as assets confirmed their secure status. Yellow warnings flickered where delays occurred, and red alerts, 7 critical locations, signaled resistance or potential compromise. Alina coordinated the response from a secure command post within the Pentagon, issuing orders to isolation teams and cyber units. At Minot Air Force Base, Colonel Westfield barricaded himself in the command center, refusing to acknowledge Orchid directive authority. Dr. Elaine Thorne, a civilian contractor and secondary operator, had activated a security override locking down launch capabilities until he could be removed. The Russian government issued a formal denial of involvement, even as Finnish special forces surrounded a safe house containing Admiral Nolan Krell. Chinese naval vessels increased patrols but maintained a cautious distance. Alina's phone buzzed. Director Celeste Corrin's voice came through. "The President requests a coordinated demonstration of command integrity." Alina agreed. The Broken Arrow Protocol, a synchronized surface maneuver by all ballistic missile submarines, would broadcast a clear message of unity and civilian control without revealing sensitive positions. 4 hours later, the oceans shimmered with movement as Ohio-class submarines rose just below the surface in unison, visible to surveillance satellites but maintaining tactical security. They held position for 90 seconds before silently submerging. Back in the Situation Room, the President watched the satellite feeds, a mix of awe and sober relief on his face. "Have we secured all compromised locations?" he asked. "All but one," Alina reported. Kitsap Naval Base remains resistant. The executive officer threatens to expose Orchid directive unless granted immunity. The President's expression hardened. This must be resolved. Alina knew the path ahead would be fraught with challenges. The silent war for the nation's soul was far from over. The tension within Kitsap Naval Base was suffocating. Commander Julian Reeves' refusal to comply with Orchid directive authority had brought the sprawling facility to a standstill. Armed personnel surrounded the command center, but Reeve remained resolute, his belief in his cause unwavering. Alina Wren arrived under heavy escort, her presence cutting through the chaos like a beacon. Her calm determination contrasted starkly with the palpable tension in the room. "Commander Reeve," she began, her voice steady but firm, "we're not here to fight, but to find a path forward. Your concerns are heard, but the threat you resist is real and growing." Reeve's gaze held hers. "And yet I wonder, who watches the watchers? What ensures your authority doesn't become a shadow tyranny?" Alina responded, "Oversight, accountability, and transparency within classified channels. Our mission is to safeguard democracy, not undermine it." Their negotiation was a tense exchange of ideals and fears, each word weighed with the potential to fracture or heal. Meanwhile, back in Washington, encrypted files extracted from compromised networks revealed the depth of infiltration. 3 senators on the Intelligence Committee had collaborated with Admiral Nolan Krell, orchestrating efforts to consolidate nuclear command under their control. These political machinations threatened the delicate balance of power, challenging the very principles Alina and her team defended. As Alina prepared a comprehensive briefing for the President, her thoughts turned to the hidden battles waged in shadows, battles that would shape the future of the nation. The crisis at Kitsap began to ease as Reeve agreed to cooperate, handing over critical data and pledging his loyalty. Yet new challenges awaited. Resistance in other installations persisted, and the political fallout rippled through the capital. Alina's role evolved, encompassing not just military strategy, but the defense of democratic ideals. As night fell, she reflected on the path ahead, a path fraught with peril, but illuminated by unwavering commitment. The fight for the nation's soul was ongoing, and Alina Wren stood ready. The dawn's pale light filtered through the reinforced windows of the White House Situation Room, casting a muted glow over the assembly of the nation's top leaders. Alina Wren stood at the center, flanked by senior military officials, intelligence directors, and members of the Classified Oversight Committee. The room was silent save for the soft hum of monitors displaying streams of data, tracking nuclear assets, encrypted communications, and real-time operational statuses. Alina cleared her throat and began, her voice steady and measured. The crisis that has unfolded over the past weeks has exposed vulnerabilities not just in our defenses but in the very fabric of our governance. The conspiracy to centralize nuclear command and compromise civilian oversight was far-reaching and coordinated. She gestured toward the main display, which illuminated a detailed timeline tracing the dismantling of the rogue network. From the initial infiltration and intercepted orders to the synchronized activation of the Broken Arrow protocol that reaffirmed civilian control. Our immediate objective, to secure compromised assets and detain conspirators, has largely been achieved, Alina continued. But the broader challenge remains, restoring trust and ensuring accountability within classified frameworks without jeopardizing operational security. The president leaned forward, fingers steepled. Transparency is vital, yet the nation cannot afford instability. How do we navigate this balance? Alina met his gaze, resolute. We propose an expansion of oversight mechanisms, enhancing the classified committee's authority and implementing stricter protocols for operator selection and monitoring. The Orchid Directive will continue, but with renewed commitments to accountability. Murmurs of assent mixed with wary glances. The weight of these reforms promised both security and controversy. Suddenly, an alert blinked on a side monitor. An encrypted message from Commander Julian Reeve. Alina opened it carefully, revealing intelligence of further factions embedded within the government, aiming to exploit the crisis for ideological and personal gain. Her brow furrowed. The internal war persists. These factions threaten to destabilize progress. The room's atmosphere tightened, discussions turning to strategies for rooting out these elements, reinforcing alliances, and preserving the integrity of the nuclear command structure. Later, in a private session, Alina met with Captain Hale Brenner and Director Celeste Corin to review intelligence and plan forward. "We have won a significant battle," Brenner admitted, weariness in his tone, "but the war for trust and stability is ongoing." Corin added, "Public scrutiny will intensify. Our actions must withstand the highest levels of examination." Alina nodded solemnly. "Our duty is to safeguard not only the weapons, but the ideals they protect. Vigilance must be relentless." As twilight descended over the capital, Alina found a quiet moment on a balcony overlooking the city's shimmering lights. The night air was cool and crisp. Her fingers brushed against the obsidian card in her pocket, the symbol of authority, secrecy, and sacrifice. The stars above seemed indifferent, distant watchers of a war fought in shadows yet shaping generations. Alina Wren, sentinel of the unseen, stood firm, a guardian of democracy, peace, and the silent promise to protect what most could never see. The morning sunlight seeped through the thick curtains of the secure briefing room at the Pentagon, casting long shadows over the worn oak table where Alina Wren and the nation's top officials had gathered. The gravity of their mission hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. After months of crisis, covert battles, and fragile victories, the final phase of their operation had begun. Alina surveyed the faces around her. The military commanders whose lives depended on split-second decisions, the intelligence officers whose vigilance had uncovered the deepest conspiracies, and the elected officials entrusted with safeguarding democracy itself. Each carried the scars of the conflict, yet their resolve remained unbroken. "The operation to neutralize internal threats is nearly complete," Alina announced, her voice steady but charged with emotion. "Most compromised personnel have been detained or have surrendered. Remaining pockets of resistance are isolated and under close surveillance." Commander Theo Laramie nodded. "The nuclear triad security protocols have been reinforced. Operators have been re-verified and redundant safeguards are in place. Alina shifted to a digital map projected before them, pinpointing key locations. The Broken Arrow Protocol demonstrated our ability to assert civilian control decisively. It sent a message to our allies and adversaries alike. The chain of command remains intact. The room was silent, absorbing the weight of that statement. But, Alina cautioned, the battle for trust continues. We face the challenge of restoring faith in our institutions, ensuring transparency where possible, and strengthening oversight without compromising security. The Secretary of Defense leaned forward. The political ramifications are vast. Public disclosure must be balanced against national security. Alina met his gaze. Agreed, that balance is delicate. Our strategy includes classified briefings for congressional leaders and a controlled public narrative to maintain confidence. Captain Hale Brenner spoke next. The human element cannot be ignored. Operators like us carry burdens invisible to the public eye. Psychological support and ethical training must be prioritized. Alina nodded. We're instituting programs for operator well-being and resilience. Director Celeste Corin added, technology evolves, and so must we. Investments in cyber defense, quantum encryption, and autonomous override systems are essential. The President, silent until now, spoke with measured authority. Your dedication has preserved our nation's safety and sovereignty, but we must never be complacent. He looked around the room. This is a new chapter in national security, one where shadows guard the light. Alina felt the weight of those words settle deep within her. After the meeting, she retreated to a quiet room, the glow of the city visible through the window. Her thoughts turned inward, the sacrifices made, the lives altered, the silent vigil maintained. She touched the obsidian card at her side, a symbol of authority, secrecy, and service beyond recognition. The war was over, but the watch continued. For Alina Wren and those like her, the final watch was never truly done. The air in the Pentagon's secure briefing room was thick with a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. After months of turmoil, covert operations, and relentless pursuit of justice within the nation's most sensitive corridors, the final chapter of the crisis had arrived. Alina Wren stood before the assembled leaders, her voice calm but resonant. We have dismantled the internal network that threatened our nuclear command. Our allies stand firm. Our adversaries have been warned. Yet the true victory lies not in the battles fought, but in the trust we rebuild. Around her, military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and members of the Classified Oversight Committee listened intently. The tension that once permeated the room had given way to a cautious optimism, tempered by the knowledge that vigilance must never wane. Captain Hale Brenner spoke first. The human toll is profound. Many operators bear scars unseen, psychological, emotional. Our next steps must prioritize their well-being. Alina nodded. We've initiated support programs, counseling, and rigorous ethical training. Our people are our greatest asset. Director Celeste Corin added, technological safeguards have been enhanced. Quantum encryption, autonomous override mechanisms, and advanced cyber defenses are now integral to our operations. The President addressed the room, his gaze steady. This crisis has shown us the fragility of our systems, but also the strength of our institutions. Transparency must be balanced with security, and accountability must be absolute. He paused, then said, Alina, your role exemplifies the silent guardianship that protects our nation. Your service is a testament to the sacrifices made in shadows. As the meeting concluded, Alina found herself alone in a quiet chamber overlooking the city's nighttime skyline. The obsidian card in her pocket seemed to pulse softly, a symbol not just of power, but of solemn duty. Her mind wandered to the countless operators scattered across the globe, ordinary people living double lives, ready to emerge when the nation called. The war they fought was unseen, the victories unsung, yet without them the fragile peace would shatter. Alina breathed deeply, steadying herself. The silent sentinel's watch never ended. Outside, the stars glittered cold and distant, a reminder that some battles are waged in darkness, shaping the light for generations to come. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long golden streaks across the skyline of a world slowly healing from invisible scars. Years had passed since the crisis that nearly fractured the nation's core. The shadows of that time lingered, whispered warnings etched into the memory of those who had fought silently to preserve the fragile balance. Alina Wren stood atop a quiet hill overlooking a sprawling city alive with the pulse of life and progress. The weight of her past service still rested heavy on her shoulders, yet there was a new purpose guiding her steps, a vision for a future shaped by lessons learned and hard-won truths. The Orchid Directive had evolved, adapting to the changing tides of technology and geopolitics. Its operators, once ghosts in the machine, were now acknowledged guardians, their sacrifices quietly honored in the halls of power. But the true recognition remained reserved for those who understood the delicate dance between secrecy and accountability. Alina reflected on the transformation, the failures and betrayals that had threatened to undo decades of security had birthed reforms. Transparent oversight committees balancing classified operations with democratic principles, cutting-edge quantum encryption safeguarding command systems, and a renewed commitment to ethical vigilance. Yet, as she surveyed the horizon, Alina knew that the future was never certain. The world was a tapestry of shifting alliances, emerging threats, and evolving challenges. The silent wars beneath the surface would continue, their outcomes shaping generations yet unborn. In a secure facility far from prying eyes, a new generation of operators, trained rigorously, steeped in the dual legacy of duty and discretion. Alina watched as young recruits absorbed lessons from her experiences, their eyes bright with determination and guarded hope. Technology surged forward at a dizzying pace. Artificial intelligence, autonomous drones, cyber warfare, all tools in the evolving arsenal of defense. The Orchid Directive adapted in tandem, weaving human judgment with machine precision. Alina's thoughts turned to the personal sacrifices woven into her journey, the friendships forged in secrecy, the solitude of hidden burdens, and the quiet pride in a mission few would ever know. As twilight deepened, she reached for the obsidian card still resting in her pocket, a symbol transformed from a secret key to a beacon of resilience. The stars emerged overhead, cold and eternal witnesses to the unseen battles that safeguarded freedom. Alina breathed in the night air, a silent sentinel poised at the edge of tomorrow. Her watch would never end. The night was still, the world seemingly at peace, yet the quiet was deceptive. For beneath the surface of everyday life, in the shadows where few dared to look, an invisible war continued. It was a war without parades or medals, without speeches or applause, fought by silent guardians whose names would never grace headlines or history books. Alina Wren sat alone in a small, dimly lit room, the soft glow of a single lamp casting gentle shadows on the walls. Before her lay the obsidian card, the emblem of authority, sacrifice, and trust. It was a symbol of a promise made and kept, of power wielded with humility and vigilance. Her thoughts wandered back through the journey, months of tension and turmoil, moments of doubt and determination, the weight of secrets that bore down on her like an unseen mantle. She thought of the men and women scattered across the globe, living quiet lives while readying themselves to step into the storm at a moment's notice. These were the Orchid Directive operators, civilians cloaked in anonymity, guardians standing watch over the world's most destructive weapons, ensuring that no rogue command, no shadow coup could bring devastation to innocents. The world had changed since the crisis. The breaches had been sealed, the conspirators unmasked, and the systems strengthened. Yet the threat of unseen dangers never vanished. It only evolved. Technology surged ahead: quantum computing, AI-driven cybersecurity, autonomous defense systems. The Orchid Directive had to evolve too, blending human intuition with machine precision, ensuring the balance between control and chaos was maintained. But beyond the technology and protocols lay the human element, the silent sacrifices of those who bore burdens unseen, the loneliness of living in shadows, the strain of constant vigilance, and the unspoken bonds formed in moments of crisis. Alina remembered the faces of comrades, some lost, some changed forever by the weight of duty. Their courage was the foundation of the nation's safety, their sacrifices woven into the fabric of peace. She stood and moved to the window, gazing out at a city alive with light and life. Children played in parks, families gathered for dinners, strangers passed each other in bustling streets, unaware of the quiet wars waged to keep them safe. It was a reminder of why the Orchid Directive existed: to protect the future, to shield the innocent, and to preserve the fragile promise of freedom. Her phone chimed softly, a message from a new recruit, recently inducted into the program, eager yet aware of the path ahead. Alina smiled faintly. The torch was being passed. The silent watch continued. She whispered to herself, "The true strength of a nation lies not just in its weapons or walls, but in those who stand guard when no one is watching." Turning away from the window, she placed the obsidian card back in its case, a relic of power and responsibility. Her watch would never end, and neither would her commitment, because peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of guardians willing to bear the silence. Thank you for journeying with us through this story of courage, sacrifice, and the unseen battles that shape our world. If this tale moved you, inspired you, or sparked your curiosity, please like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us where you're watching from. Your voice enriches our community. Stay vigilant, stay hopeful, and remember, some heroes work in silence, so the rest of us can live in peace. This is Veteran Biker. Until next time.